Good evening. Welcome. My name is Laura Creed, and I am the co-chair of the League of Women Voters Greater Cleveland Shaker Heights chapter. And so thank you all for coming out tonight and welcome. First, Mayor Dave Weiss is going to come up and say a few words to welcome you, and then I'll introduce our moderator tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the community building. And let me just start out by saying thank you to the League for inviting this distinguished panel. And thank you all for coming. And thank you to KJ for agreeing to moderate today. I will be very brief because this is my night off. I get to listen to other people answer questions. So this is good. But I did want to just mention a couple things briefly. The League was kind enough to ask me to give my State of the City address, I don't know, I guess a month or two ago. And we started out by talking about momentum, change, and progress in the city in lots of different contexts. But one of them in particular was the cooperation between the three taxing authorities. And so this is another example of bringing the library, the schools, and the city together to talk about issues that in many cases may be their own issues, but also in many cases overlap and address community-wide issues. One of them, I think, hopefully you've heard about, is our Forward Together process in the development, the hope to develop a community-wide, long-term facilities plan. And we have been moving forward with that. And if you've come to any of the initial meetings, hopefully you've enjoyed the conversation and are participating, and there is more to come. Our next public meeting is in June, so we hope you will consider joining us again. With that, let me just say that the issues, the things that we're all addressing as elected officials are in many ways the same. That is limited resources and trying to do a lot with what we have, which is continues to be challenging. But working together is not only the smart thing to do, but it's really an imperative. And so I thank my colleagues, all of my colleagues on the panel for their hard work, as well as others in the audience here. And with that, I will turn it back to Laura. So thank you.
Now my pleasure to introduce our moderator tonight. It's Shaker Heights Municipal Court Judge K.J. Montgomery. She was first elected to the bench in 1993 and then was reelected to 4 more additional 6-year terms here in Shaker Heights. And if I did my math right, that's about 25 years. So she's been here and served our community and other surrounding communities for quite a bit of time. Last year, there were over 12,000 new cases filed in her court. So just a few. So Judge Montgomery is a graduate of Cleveland Marshall Law School and Heidelberg University, where she received her bachelor's degree in music. And I understand too, Judge, that you are going to be the commencement speaker at Heidelberg in a few weeks. That's really an honor. As many of you know, Judge Montgomery is very involved in the community, and I went through all the list of all the organizations, so we don't have time to go through all of them, but I just thought I would highlight a few here, in particular in Shaker Heights. So, of course, I have to say she's a League member, and she also helped to create the what is now the Night for the Red and White, which has been going on for many years and is quite a wonderful event. She also chaired the Boulevard School 80th anniversary celebration and also helped with the incorporation of the PTO. So thank you for your service and thank you for being our moderator tonight. Welcome.
Thank you, and it's nice to be here. So as I understand, what we are going to do as we begin the evening is each of the taxing bodies, which sounds so nasty, just a taxing body. Each of the groups will have 10 minutes to address you, and then if you have questions, you are to pass them, I believe, to the right, and Sarah and Mike will get them from you over here. And we will then go to a question and answer based on the questions you're proposing. So without further ado, let us start with City Council, and go right ahead. I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
This evening, we have decided, Sean and I have decided to divide our 10-minute time into 2 5-minute sections. There is so much to talk about that's going on in the city and so little time to really cover all of it. But I think most of you have heard the mayor's State of the City address. And so we've decided to just focus on a couple of specific items that are of particular interest to us. And I'm going to talk about the Sustainability Committee. This Sustainability Committee started as the Climate Change Task Force in 2014, and we started this committee after we had a major flooding event, which many of you may remember, in the summer of 2014. And the task force authored a report in 2015, and it was called Building a Resilient City. And we began working to develop recommendations for actions that the city and the residents can take to increase our resilience. We had a number of engaged residents involved on this committee with us, on this task force with us, and we worked on things from recycling to installation of solar panels to trying to help the city offer a renewable electrical energy option. This year, the task force has evolved into a formal city council committee. And it is, again, composed of city council members and residents. But now we have city staff assisting us, and we have also hired a part-time sustainability coordinator, Michael Peters, who's a Shaker resident. And the purpose of the committee is to advocate for, and support the environmental, economic, and social sustainability of the community in partnership with our residents, our businesses, and the government to meet the needs of our community without compromising our resources or the well-being of future generations. Kind of a lofty goals, but we're already getting started, and we're going to focus on achievable short, mid, and long-range goals, and we're off to a good start already. We have just received a grant that's going to help Shaker Heights achieve LEED for Cities certification. And LEED, for those of you who aren't familiar with that acronym, is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. Shaker is just one of 14 communities that was awarded this grant this year. And it is the smallest community, and we're looking forward to working on this. LEED for Cities identifies 8 categories like water, transportation, and land use. And this is a framework which is going to allow us to track, prioritize, and communicate our goals within the city and to our residents. We're just getting started, and we're looking forward to developing the best sustainable practices in the community. And I bring this up tonight for another reason, and that is because we are looking for residents that are interested in this. This is one way that you can participate in city government and help us set our goals and our priorities. We will be forming subcommittees to work on different issues and goals. And if you are interested, I would ask that you contact me, or you can contact Sean, who is on the committee, or Juliana Johnston Centuria is the other council member, and she is the chair of the committee. So we're looking forward to working on this, and I hope that there are some of you out there that would be interested in being engaged with us. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean.
Thank you, Ann. Thanks for the opportunity to chat with you all tonight. I'm going to focus on another initiative that's being led by the city, but it also touches on school board and library board members as well, involves the whole community, and that's something known as the Human Relations Task Force. I've been serving as the chair of this organization since, I think, the end of 2017. This is an opportunity for residents to engage in volunteer activities, face-to-face interaction with your fellow Shaker residents, opportunities to engage in respectful dialogue, share fun experiences with your friends and neighbors. The overall goal is just to make Shaker a more welcoming place, both for residents who are already here, getting to know our neighbors a little better, and also welcoming new residents into Shaker. It's been a fluid group, I'd say. We have approximately 15 formal members, but there are some formal members who've shown up once or twice, and we have a lot of other folks who were not members to begin with and have come just about every time. It's open to anyone. We've been meeting every other month. As I said, we have members of the library staff, we have teachers, we have city staff, just concerned residents, anyone who's interested in, as I said, making Shaker a more welcoming place. Through sort of fits and starts over the last year and a half, we've settled on 4 initiatives, 2 of which fall in the category of interacting more meaningfully with your current neighbors, and the other two fall in the category of welcoming new folks to Shaker. In terms of welcoming folks to Shaker, we do have a English as a second language program at the public library. Some of you may be familiar with this. Carolyn Steiner has been organizing this for a number of years. It's a great program, teaching English to international newcomers every Tuesday night. I think it's 7 p.m. So we're looking to promote and support that. Another initiative we've been promoting is something that the Lomond Association has spearheaded, which is simply literally welcoming new residents to Shaker with care packages, knocking on their doors, introducing yourself. We'd like to find a way to encourage other residents to engage in that kind of a welcome to new residents. And also the school board, or I'm sorry, the school district itself, we're hoping, Dr. Glassner has expressed some interest in doing this, creating a district-wide welcoming process for new students, and maybe even hooking them up with mentors, students who are already in the district who can help make them feel comfortable. Then in the category of getting to know your own neighbors better, we've been promoting and supporting community conversations around a variety of topics. One we're going to be promoting coming up at the end of June is something that you may have heard of called Common Ground. It's a national program, just sharing a meal with your neighbors. The topic, I think, for this year is the environment. There's going to be 2 Common Ground events in Shaker, one at the library in the afternoon, if I'm not mistaken, and then one at Heights Christian Church in the evening. So we're promoting events like that. And then we're also trying to get people to have fun together, not just to have serious conversations. And a pet project of mine has been the idea of an international festival, a citywide festival. The schools do a good job of putting those on. But that's an ambitious thing. And we're also just looking to promote a lot of the great events that are already happening in the city. One thing we've been exploring is other ways of spreading the word about all the stuff that's going on in the city, whether it's through an app, through some form of visual display that residents driving or walking by can see. So I'll stop, and happy to answer questions either in the formal part or afterwards. And I will note, though, that if you're interested in coming, anyone's welcome. May 9th is our next meeting. We're at City Hall, 6 p.m., if I'm not mistaken. So thank you.
So you're looking here at a photograph taken about a month ago. The Shaker Heights High School Marching Band made a trip to Italy. 250 members of the marching band, accompanied by 150 friends and family and 50 more chaperones and band directors and band director spouses. So that was a total of almost 450 people. This is the steps of St. Andrew the Apostle Cathedral in the Piazza in Amalfi, Italy. And you're looking at interim superintendent Dr. Stephen Wilkins and incoming superintendent and current interim high school principal, Dr. David Glassner, and in between them is the mayor of Amalfi presenting them with a declaration welcoming them. So as you know, the schools have had a bumpy time of it beginning last summer, but I'm happy to report that the schools are active and vibrant. And in fact, tonight, just to give you an example, we're competing with a 6th grade band concert and a public input session about the outdoor spaces at Fernway, which is related to a joint effort with the city to apply for a state grant to help fund the rebuild of the outdoor spaces at Fernway. So I know many of you have seen some of these before, but I'll go through them quickly just to kind of talk a little about some of the highlights that we like to share when we talk about our schools. That Shaker Heights is one of only 8 international baccalaureate school districts in all of North America, K through 12 certified, pre-K through 12. Our graduation rate has increased from 82% in 2012 to 94% in 2017. 2017 only because those are the official Ohio Department of Education numbers. We haven't, although we know we have internal numbers. We don't have official numbers yet for 2018. I want to share that our high-achieving students are excelling like never before, doing incredible things, and all of our students continue to excel in music, the arts, drama, writing. Let me tell you that in the fall, as we welcome a new superintendent, we will begin to look at restarting our strategic planning process, and along with that, we will also take another look at our long-term facilities planning. I also want to share that in February, the district adopted a strong educational equity policy at the recommendation of our equity task force. And our next task is to pick out an equity tool, which is a very important piece of this, by which that will become the measuring stick by which we measure ourselves and our progress. Important work ahead of us. One-to-one technology rollout starts in the fall. Chromebooks for each student, and we're at work on that. I have a slide here about the district financials. We received another clean audit. No operating levy since 2014. As you'll recall, there was a $30 million bond levy in 2016. We're very pleased at our increased collaboration and support that we're receiving from the Shaker Schools Foundation. I wanted to point out two things from this past year. One is $100,000, in excess of $100,000 investment in I3. I3 stands for Inquiry, Innovation, and Imagination. And it is also, the schools are contributing funding to this, but it's a curriculum-wide K-12 effort that will enhance hands-on education in STEAM-related fields. There'll be a maker's space in Woodbury. The engineering curriculum at the high school will expand to 4 years. There'll be advanced manufacturing certifications. You can take any one of those engineering courses without having taken the entire sequence. I also wanted to acknowledge and thank the foundation for its work in finding so far $225,000 towards the reconfiguration of the play area at Fernway. And as you can see, there are we highlighted a couple of efforts where we've been able to conserve on resources, self-insurance in our health insurance, which is something that happened previously, continues to saved us this year about $500,000. We've moved to Google services and cloud-based systems, and we're in the process of converting to e-Finance Plus software system that will help a lot with streamlining our resources. It allows for much better control in each of the buildings so that building principals will eventually have greater access to what their resources are, and we'll be able to integrate purchasing, and there's some advantages for human resources. And finally, this is from our treasurer, asked me to point out that he was able to save us $400,000 by refinancing district debt. So this summer, we will be having our second construction season using the $30 million that we raised for capital investment. All 8 schools will see work. There'll be about $12.3 million spent on roofs, boilers, ADA improvements, security upgrades, electrical upgrades, foundations, parking lots, water mains, some work on the pools as well. And we will also be in full swing rebuilding Fernway. The project the first bids are coming in for construction in full, and so apologies if you happen to live near Fernway, but there'll be a lot of activity coming up. And let me just throw up a couple of highlights. This is a quick slide showing a snapshot of the class of 2019. Students have done very well in early admissions, early decisions. They're in the process of making their final decisions now, so we don't have a summary of how things look for you, but I can report that there are 10 students headed to college as student athletes with scholarships, and a number of other, we'll get the final reporting on it, but a number of other amazing scholarships and awards that we're hearing about. Let me move on to some highlights here. Our marching band was awarded, this is the trip to Italy, but our music education program was awarded once again, recognized as a best community for music education. Our art program continues to excel. There were 4 student artists that won national medals, which is fantastic. Successes in robotics for an orchestra student. Ohio History Day, that's National History Day. Over the weekend, 5 students have been identified as advancing to the national finals in Maryland in June, plus 2 alternates. So we have 5 students taking 4 projects to NHD finals. In classics, you see that a group from the junior high school, from the middle school, won 2nd overall in Ohio at the Classical League 2019 Latin Convention, and that the Shakerite won the Columbia Scholastic Press Association Silver Crown Award, something which they have achieved in the past. Let me just show you one more slide with some wonderful results for some of our students in athletics. You may know, I'm not completely sure that this is accurate. I read it online, but I heard that diver Lyle Yost was offered an Olympic tryout of some sort, so forgive me if that's inaccurate, and I'm sharing inaccurate info, but he's done amazingly well, as have some of our other students. You see in wrestling, Najee Lockett was the state wrestling runner-up in his weight class with a record of 41-1. And tennis coach Al Slauson got his 1,000th win. Let me just show you. We are very happy to welcome Dr. David Glassner, and we also will be announcing a new principal for the high school on May 10th. Last night, the first candidate was at the school, and tomorrow night, the second candidate will be there. And I will stop there, although there's a cute photo here of the class of 2032. This is from the kindergarten kickoff on Saturday. So, sorry I've gone over. Cheers.
And finally, from our library board.
So good evening, I'm Amy Schweitzer from the library, and I have Mike Birch from our library board, our vice president, with me. And tonight I'm going to share some information with you about how the library is working every day to bring our mission and our vision to life. Don't worry, I'm going to start with the renovation. Facility is part of our vision, because I know that's what you're all dying to find out about, is what's happening with our building. Oops. Okay, so part of transforming lives in our community means transforming our facilities to better meet those needs. And as you know, the library passed an operating levy last May. It's an operating levy, so we actually didn't start getting the money until this January. So we just started getting the money, and we've been working all year to start spending it. In addition to supporting our operating costs, the levy allows us to renovate and repair both the main library and the Bertram Woods branch. And a high priority in both buildings is dealing with some of the repair issues. For example, at the main library, we need to deal with the HVAC and with the roof, among other things. things. But in addition to dealing with much needed repairs in both buildings, the library renovation is also going to create some attractive spaces for users of all ages that can be flexible and reconfigured to meet future needs. You know, we never could have predicted in 1993 when we were in that school building what we were going to be needing in 2019, and I'm confident 25 years from now, we'll have no idea, right now what we'll be doing in 25 years. But we'll have space for quiet and collaborative work and engaging and inviting spaces for children and for teens. We do want to move the teen center down to the first floor so that it can be open all the hours that the library is open and the whole teen area together. We'll have more and better study rooms at Main, and we are going to add study rooms at the Bertram Woods branch. We get requests for that. We're going to improve our meeting rooms. Our meeting rooms are much in need of improvement currently. We'll improve the amenities, the technology and equipment, and the spaces themselves. We're going to move our computer center to the first floor. Right now it's about as far away from the front door as you can get, so it's not very convenient and accessible. And we also want to make our collection easier to browse and use with better displays and lower shelving. And the other thing that the renovation is going to let us do is have more efficient library operations and use our money more effectively. You're probably wondering, when are we going to do this, right? I told you what we're going to do. When are we going to do it? Well, we hired RFC Contracting as our owner's representative in January, and at their April board meeting, the library board did approve entering into negotiations with an architect for a contract, and we're in the middle of that right now. So I hope within the next few days we'll have a contract and I'll be able to announce the architect that we've hired. We are also working on hiring a construction manager for the project. The RFQs for the construction manager at risk are due May 1st, and we expect that the board will be approving the hire of the construction manager at their June meeting. And the exciting part, right, is we anticipate design of the main library starting in June. We're going to do the main library first and then the branch. And the mayor talked about Forward Together, and it's provides a really broad framework that's actually really beneficial to us as we plan. The timing is perfect as we plan our repair and renovation work, because we've had the opportunity to kind of hear bigger community conversations about our facilities overall. And in addition to that, as we get started with our design planning, we'll be having some library-specific sessions led by the architect so we can hear from our community specifically about the library. We anticipate construction at Main starting next year, and as we're finishing up construction at Main, we'll start the design process working on the branch. So there will be plenty of opportunity for our community to have some input, and we're really excited moving forward. But as we talk about our vision, we've been talking about our facility for a really long time. We are more than just our building. So I want to spend the rest of my time talking about the other ways that we work every day to bring our vision to life. And since we passed our levy last year, we have really made some changes in our policies to improve the free access that we provide to our community. So we are open on Sundays 1 to 5 all year long now. You can come to us every Sunday all summer long. We'll be happy to have you. Our main library meeting rooms in both buildings are now free for nonprofits. We used to charge a fee for nonprofits, and it's free. We do still charge a fee if you want to have a party or a shower, but if you're a nonprofit, come join us for free. We're offering $1 a day of free printing for library card holders and free faxing. So just in the last year, we've made all of these changes to try to make our services more accessible and free. And also, our collection is widely available and free. Of course, you can come visit us anytime, and we'd love to have you. But we also have a really extensive collection of e-media that's available anytime, anywhere, no matter where you are. We have movies, music, books, audiobooks, comic books, magazines, all kinds of things, and a variety of platforms to make it convenient for you. So, when it comes to the joy of reading, and I'm not reading the whole vision aloud to you because it's just 10 short minutes, but when it comes to the joy of reading and a commitment to lifelong learning, we start at birth and we don't stop. I'm trying to tell you some things that you may not know about the library, many things you know about us, but you may not know that we have an early literacy specialist who visits all of the preschools and daycares in Shaker on a regular basis, and she sees about just over 400 children a month, bringing the library to them, and that is Miss Wendy up in the corner there at one of her outreach visits. And we also have a collection of books that we take to those preschools and daycares so the library can come to them and we can take the joy of reading throughout the community. We just got a grant to buy almost 1,900 books that will be dedicated exclusively for that collection, and that will reflect the diversity of our community. We also have many robust partnerships that help us respond to community needs. And we have robust partnerships with both the schools and the city, but I want to tell you again about some things that you may not know we're doing. A benefits outreach counselor from the food bank holds office hours once a month at the library to help people in need get assistance applying for Medicaid and food stamps and learning about housing, employment, and healthcare resources. Family Connections is our longtime partner in presenting the Play and Learn station. You can do your passport application and get your passport photo taken at the library now. We started that last year too. You can take GED classes with Tri-C Aspire. And the library is also a safe space, or safe place. When teens find themselves in crisis or need a place to stay, we can provide access to immediate help and supportive resources for them. So these are just some of our robust partnerships. We help the community learn and solve problems. And your Shaker Library card provides access to thousands of high-quality videos via lynda.com. You can learn business, software, technology, all kinds of creative skills. We have free online ACT and SAT test prep. It's a self-paced program that helps students raise their ACT scores an average of 3 points and their SAT scores an average of 150 points, free at your library. We also offer personalized services. You can book individual appointments with our technology trainer, and you can also book a librarian. 30 to 50 minutes of one-on-one sessions to help you with your library needs, even if it's just something like reviewing a resume. So make an appointment. We'd love to see you. And we also work to support achievement for all of our kids with a variety of literacy and enrichment programming. Our summer reading program is part of supporting achievement for our kids. You might think of it as something that's just fun and free to do with your kids in the summer, and it is. But it's also more than that. You might not know that participating in our summer reading program can help prevent the summer slide, when students tend to lose some of the achievement gains they made during the previous school year. Our summer reading program encourages daily reading and helps make it fun. And studies have shown that participating in summer reading programs has a positive effect on student achievement and outcomes by preventing learning loss. And participants outperformed non-participants on tests across all measures and grades. We do math and reading summer reviews. Students can get one-on-one appointments with a certified teacher during the summer. And it's hard to read and learn when you're hungry. Our summer snacks and stories program can help children who rely on school meals for food during the day. Children and teens up to age 17 can come. We read a short story. You do have to listen to the story to get the snack. So we're encouraging enjoying reading and enjoying stories, as well as helping feed hungry people. And we serve as a trusted source of information and a forum for all viewpoints. And part of being that forum for all viewpoints is being a place where civil community conversations can be held on important and difficult issues in our community. I'm almost done. In recent months, we've held programs on poverty and eviction, race and the criminal justice system, microaggressions and racism, immigration, and panhandling. All tough topics that need to be discussed. And we have a panel discussion on cats and dogs in neighborhoods and a discussion on low-income housing in Shaker coming up. And we're working on planning a roundtable in the fall about reentry from prison. So lots of interesting conversations happening at the library. And Shaker Library preserves and shares our history. And there's our board.
Thank you, Amy. I love her energy. I just somehow, libraries, she just makes them so exciting. So as a result, from the questions we got, well, let me first explain. As I understand, there are 2 minutes to answer or respond to a question that our audience has proposed, and that is 2 minutes per person. And so I hope you will share some of these questions. And because we just talked about libraries, we have a young man here who has this question. How can the schools work with the libraries to make better, more readily available studying spaces?
Well, we are working on better studying spaces is part of what we're doing with our renovation. We recognize that that's something that people absolutely want from the library, as a place where they can work and study quietly. So we do have study rooms and we do have study spaces, but it's definitely an area that we're going to be improving with our renovation and adding at the branch. I'm not sure how the schools can help.
All right. I think simply by continuing to share information so that our students, we can be a vehicle for letting folks know where they can go and what the hours are. I know, you just watch students spend a lot of time in Bertram Woods during the week, and so I know they take advantage of it, and on weekends at the main library especially.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, next question. What is the process for the Joint Facility Task Force to make decisions? Will the task force send recommendations back to each official organization, in other words, the city, school, and library boards, for their decisions? How will this work?
Well, we don't, I'm actually not one of the city council members on the Joint Facilities Task Force, but my understanding is that it's a fluid process, and the city, schools, and library all paid for a consultant who's organizing this process. I think it's at least a years-long process to come up with a vision, at which point I think there will be further discussions about how to implement such a vision. But we're still very much in the listening phase, finding out what residents of Shaker want to see for the future.
And I can jump in and add, actually, I am on the task force and I'm also on the core group, so that means I have weekly phone calls with the consultants. And there is a task force meeting scheduled for May, and we're just discussing the agenda, and this topic is actually on the agenda, is working with the task force to try to kind of formalize what that structure is. It has been fairly fluid, and that's something that we'll be looking at.
Next question. The Shaker Heights Development Corporation has purchased a building on Lee. Is that a new initiative for them? Are there more planned? And what is the plan for that specifically purchased Lee Road building?
Well, we could have Nick Fedor come up here, but I'm not going to put him on the spot. Ann, if you want to add to this in a second, but I think SHDC is trying to partner with the private sector as much as possible, and in situations where there aren't private sector partners available, they've been assisting with the purchase of buildings. I believe this may be a reference to the Process K-9 building, which has been a big success, doggy daycare for those of you who aren't familiar with it. They've been so successful they need more space. And we're starting to see that sort of activity happening on Lee Road, and private sector is also contributing to it.
This is a question for school board, and I would like to expand this question. The question says, what steps will you take to implement the equity policy? What is your timeline? How will you keep the public informed of your progress? And what I would like to add is, could you give us just a quick synopsis of what that equity policy is?
Judge, I think you said, what are the components? Your question was the components of the policy.
Right.
So I'll start there, and then you can remind me of the other pieces. So we passed earlier this year, yeah, in February, the equity policy. I've served for the last 2 years plus on the equity task force before I became a school board member. And the policy really just goes through what the focus or the purpose of the equity policy is. Really, it is to break down barriers for all of our students across all segments of our community as it relates to access to high quality education. We identify some measurable goals that we want the board, that we want the district to implement, and then we talk about how often the board is going to look at the progress towards those goals. So that's a policy kind of in a very broad stroke nutshell. It has definitions at the end of it to the extent the contents of the policy itself can be a bit confusing. Did I miss anything on the policy? Okay.
And let's piggyback on that. So the question is, what steps will you take to implement, and what is your timeline, and how will you let us know what's going on?
So now that we've passed the policy, our next step, as Jeff mentioned in his initial presentation, is for us to identify the equity tool that the board will use to measure the district's progress. As you all heard, we have some personnel changes afoot and are in the process, or will be in June, of onboarding a new superintendent. He will be integral to this process and making sure that he's a part of that and in line with what the board expects of the district is extremely important. So we will work with him to establish the timeline, the expectations, so that he understands really clearly what his deliverables are and when we expect to do that. We will then, and this is going to be very exciting to some of my task force members, ensure that a part of that is making sure that the equity task force or the web page is updated on a regular basis with the details of the timeline as well as what the district is doing towards achieving the goals of that timeline. We have used the website in some ways over the last couple of years, but we haven't been perfect with it. And so it is personally a goal of mine to make, and some others on the task force, to make sure that we are better at communicating with the public through at least the website, and then maybe in other forums and means over time. So that's where we are with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This goes to all three boards specifically. How many people of color are in administrative roles in your organizations, or at least generally speaking, and how do you believe this affects your leadership?
So I guess the question means for the board or for the administration of the district?
It sounds like the administration of the district.
Well, so I think that's 2 for the administration. If I'm thinking about it, the upper administration of the school district in the admin building, that's 2. If we're talking about our board, the number is 2 also. And then how do I think it affects? Yeah, it does. It's interesting. So I'll have a very transparent moment with you all here because I like to do that. I often wonder, with all of the other things that I personally do in life, whether or not my presence matters in certain places. And I'm sure that my colleagues wonder the same thing. I have found over the last year being a member of the school board that not just because of my color, but because of my life experience, being in Shaker for as long as I have, maybe some of my personal skill sets, whatever the case may be, that presence actually does matter. And I have at times thought about whether or not it always makes the most sense for me to try to do everything that I do. It is, I think, really important for our community to have folks who care, are engaged, but also have different experiences than the majority of our population. And with that being said, it seems to me that you do need diversity, thank you, that you do need inclusive diversity in a way where folks are able to be heard and their experiences are valued. Yeah, so it was a loaded question, I'm sure on purpose, and that's my answer.
With reference to the city or library?
Well, I will say that there's one minority member of City Council. There are several members of the city administration who are directors who are members of color. But I think it's fair to say that our city is not, city staff, city elected officials are not necessarily representative background-wise of the city of Shaker Heights. And I think that's something we're all working on. So I think I've been hoping that our Human Relations Task Force can do more of, which is getting people to interact with others who are different than they are from all across the city. I think high school kids, elementary school kids in Shaker are pretty good about this, but as we grow up, as we age, as we pick where we live, we tend to live around people who look like us or think like us. And I think we all are trying to challenge each other to get to know people who aren't like us and find out the things that we have in common. And I think we can all do a better job of it.
Thank you. Library board?
And I'm
Oh,
just
I'm
going to
sorry.
add one comment on that, too. And one thing that we're trying to do at the city, because we recognize that it is important to have voices from all parts of our community, people of color, every neighborhood. And one thing that we've started under our new mayor is that you can apply for positions on committees. So it's an open process. And I think in this way, we can get people not only with the expertise, but with the voice to more clearly represent all parts of Shaker. So I'm very excited about that as we move forward.
And very briefly for the library, we have 2 board members who are both women of color, and we have 1 manager in our administrative who is a man of color. But I would echo the other sentiments there that we can do a better job of it at the library, and with the influence of our board members and the push to do that, I think we will do better in the future.
Thank you. Can you give us some specific goals as to what you expect to get out of the Forward Together initiative? Some specific goals.
I think specifically, especially in the first phase, it's going to be 2 phases, and I am on the task force. So the first phase is going to run into the fall, and that's our visioning process. And I really think one of our major goals there is to have this discussion amongst the 3 taxing bodies about what our facilities look like, what our plans are. But more importantly, we've been having these listening sessions so that residents can let us know what they're thinking. So it really is a gathering of information and really looking at what our vision is for the facilities. What do we see going forward? Then in the next phase, looking at specifically how can we work together on concrete ideas of sharing facilities and eventually, hopefully, sharing some of the costs of these facilities as we move forward.
So I too serve on that task force, and I would say that one of the things we're looking for are low-hanging fruit. I mean, folks are working on projects. Where are there synergies? Where are there shared goals? So is there something immediately that we can do? But I think also there's almost I describe it as a soft goal, which is that as folks sit with each other in monthly meetings, as they have conversations about their planning processes, there just are more opportunities to have conversations across the 3 organizations. And they already, I will say, it's not like they were not speaking to each other to begin with. So this is really kind of improving, enhancing, building the relationships in that way. Just if folks know what's going on across town in another department, there's a much greater chance that you'll be able to understand where opportunities lie.
And I echo what Jeff said. I think what it's done is it's enhanced these opportunities and put us in a position where we're talking with each other, at least on a monthly basis, on just any number of different levels, where we're communicating with each other and understanding what each other's goals and objectives are, and finding ways that we continue to coordinate and work together even better than we have in the past.
And I'd just like to actually add on to that because, as I mentioned, we're just getting ready to start design for the main library, which is right next door to this building. So to be really specific, in addition to everything else that people have said about, which I totally echo, relationship building, and I know this is long-term vision, but we're starting design in June and really thinking about how the library and the community building interact together and start to have those conversations as part of our design process. We're doing this. And so I'm so excited that we are having these conversations and building these relationships and be able to have a discussion about how do, say, the meeting room space and community space in this building interact with the meeting room space, for example, at the library, and what do we need with a renovation compared to what's needed here. And as we move into design at the Bertram Woods branch, the same thing. It's right across from the middle school. We're hearing lots of discussion about that area, and I just really feel like where we are in the design process, the vision and communication we hear from our community can really inform the library's process.
Thank you. So we have a question that addresses the very young and a question that addresses the not so young. The first question is, can the schools and the city work together to build more public playgrounds near our high-density housing? And how can we find space or public money for quality pre-K parks, et cetera, and facilities for that young group?
Well, I'll say, first of all, we have more than 20 parks in Shaker already. I think some of them are underused. Sheldon Park is a terrific example of a Hildana Park out on Chagrin Boulevard. Some of you may have driven by and seen that funky-looking door statue. But there's also a lot of other things we've done to activate that park, encourage people to use it more often. There's a Wi-Fi charging station in that park. There are chessboards, pardon me, there. But I actually, Shelton Park is one thing that's been on my mind, because I'll give a specific, and I know I've got the school board members here, but this has been an issue for quite a while. The bus depot out on Lee Road is an example of an area where hopefully down the road the city and the schools can come up with a solution that would allow Shelton Park to be accessed from the street. Maybe we could move the bus depot. That's something it's a complicated issue, but it's been discussed for quite some time. That's something that I think could potentially come out of the joint facilities planning process, and that would activate a great park, a great community asset that's in a neighborhood where a lot of people don't even know that it exists. So there's all sorts of little pocket parks throughout Shaker. I don't think it's a shortage of parks. It's just a question of driving people into the parks, and we've got a lot of great programs. Director Alex Nichols, Recreation Director, the City of Shaker has, yoga in the parks, all sorts of programs. I see some of you who've been to these during the summer, and there'll be any number of those coming up in the weeks to come here.
Thank you. Anyone else?
There was a second part to the question. Can you
Yes,
remind
the
us of what
second
that
part was, how can we find space and public money for quality pre-K?
So that is an excellent question and a large question, clearly. As you may know, that we have established Shaker's First Class, which is 2 classrooms, 2 two-year cohorts, pre-K aligned with IB curriculum. It's funded through tuition, although about a third of the seats are paid for by outside sources, so scholarship monies. And we know that intervening in the early years is one of the best ways to make sure that all students start kindergarten on equal footing. It's got to be a priority for our schools and for our community to expand pre-K, and we are certainly interested to understand how to do that. I think that there is some momentum statewide. Certainly our new governor has talked a little bit about that, but let's see how that plays out in terms of dollars. But some understanding that there needs to be a greater access to pre-K, and it's probably going to have to come through some sort of, schools, apparatus. Is there anything else to?
Okay, so this is for the more senior population. My family chose to move to Shaker for the schools, but their children have all graduated. So this person is interested in knowing what Shaker Heights offers to the empty nesters by way of libraries, cities, and schools.
I'll just chime in quickly. I wish we had Director Alex Nichols here, because the Recreation Department does have quite a number of, maybe Mayor Weiss or Jerry Chaikin, I think I saw Jerry back there, may want to chime in as well. I think this is something the city is trying to do more of. I think we're partnering with, what's the name of the organization, Mayor Weiss? Community Partnership on Aging, yeah. So yes, we're very aware of the seniors' desire to have more activities, and the city is trying within its means to make them available.
And I'm just going to add on a quick comment about housing, because I hear it all the time for empty nesters looking for a variety of housing. And as we continue to look at housing in and around the Van Aken district and in other areas of Shaker, it's something we're keeping in mind because we do hear it frequently.
I conveniently brought our library program guide with me because I wanted to be able to look up the answers to the questions. And we do offer a variety of programming for adults of all ages at the library. But we also have some things that are specifically targeted at seniors. I'm looking at the program guide just through May, and there's free tax help, there's an introduction to Tai Chi, there's healthy eating, and there's also a program on preparing to care, becoming a caregiver for an older adult. So we have, lots of adult programs that are just for anybody, but we also have some that are specifically for seniors. I think it's an area where we could probably add even more.
And as a new empty nester, I will say what I personally like to do at the schools that's not related to my board membership, and that is enjoy our wonderful arts through the band, through the sports activities, through the theater. I mean, I've been in the theater probably more since my kids graduated. Well, because I was at their sporting events when they were there. And it really is a jewel, I think, in our community that I hope more people like me will partake, in and enjoy without having to go all the way down to Public Square for entertainment.
One other thing occurred to me, the city, this isn't in the category of necessarily fun things to do, but the city is partnering with an organization I think called Empowering and Strengthening Our People, offering financial consulting, particularly to seniors who are of limited means, and particularly often single women who are seniors, helping them get back on track financially so they can manage their affairs, pay their bills, and ultimately their taxes too.
Thank you. In light of the Greater Cleveland Partnership survey regarding the high cost of living and working in Cuyahoga County, what is Shaker's view on municipality mergers or shared use of services to reduce community costs or redundancies of services?
A very good question, and one that often comes up as we're out in the community. I think we're all very, very aware and concerned about the high rate of taxation in Shaker. And personally, I have to look at it looking at it from a regional basis. I'm a very strong supporter of regionalization and looking at communities merging together. It is incredibly difficult to do so. There's so much difficulty in anyone giving up any kind of power and control. But I think you start by doing things like we have done with our dispatch center, which is a number of communities come together and we are doing the dispatch of police and fire from one location. We have tried hard to merge our fire department with University Heights Fire Department. That stalled out, but that doesn't mean we're giving up on it. It's something we have to continue to look at. So I think we continue to look at an eye of how can we share these services and hopefully get to the point where we can share some of our expensive equipment as well with our surrounding communities. It is on our mind and we are trying to work towards that.
I'll just add some of the challenges that we have as municipalities is the political climate in Cuyahoga County right now. It's not necessarily conducive to big picture reform. So I think we'll see a lot more of what Ann referred to as these kind of de facto regionalism initiatives, and the mayors continue, I think, a lot of the stuff that Mayor Lyken started in terms of partnering with our neighbors, trying to find ways to share costs, and a lot of what we're doing up here tonight, trying to partner with the other municipal entities in the city boundaries to potentially save money for residents as well.
Can I just add that some of these shared service arrangements are already in place that the schools take advantage of. There's an ESC, Educational Services Center, and also technical support where a single entity provides support for a number of school districts. We probably need to do a better job of explaining where those are and how they operate, but there are a number of those in place, and would be happy to understand more about where opportunities are. Maybe once we move the bus depot, we can think right. We can think about where some sort of synergy might be there.
And I just think from a library perspective, we are a longtime member of the CleveNet Library Consortium. And so the CleveNet Library Consortium, they keep adding services that they provide for us just without an additional cost of our membership. So they are a real place where we have, it is like 45 libraries. In fact, Mentor is joining May 6th. Another library is joining across 12 counties. So it's very, very regional and absolutely affords us a lot of cost savings.
This is for the school board. Some high schools give students the opportunity to go to community colleges, allowing them to finish high school with an associate's degree. Has this been on Shaker's radar? Is it something that you would look at?
So there is actually, the state requires that school districts pay for any through, it's called College Credit Plus, right? That is not available at your local high school. So, and we certainly do that. We certainly participate in that. And there are other collaborations that are that are being talked about with, it flows, some of it flows through our technical education programs, but through programs with Tri-C. I don't know that there's a formal conversation about also completing an AA degree while you're in high school, but you can earn credits, yeah.
Right, yeah, absolutely, you earn credits. What's interesting is our students, the majority of our students, because I had one of these, I have two children. One of them was the student who was so into the advanced placement courses and making sure that she had what she needed to go on to a four-year college that going to Tri-C wasn't a part of our program. And so thinking about how our guidance department maybe incorporates that for families who are interested in that, and we have been made aware of certain families who are interested in it, and those accommodations have been provided. It's just not a mainstream portion of what we do. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It certainly does for those families who are interested in it, and maybe we need to do a better job of communicating that in those yearly planning meetings with families.
With reference to energy and the energy committees, have all the fluorescent lights in city buildings been replaced? I know that answer. I know that answer. With energy efficient LED lighting, and are there any plans to address our street lighting in a similar fashion?
I feel like this is an exam I didn't study enough for. I know that the city has conducted an energy efficiency study a number of years back, and this is one of the things our sustainability committee is going to be looking at. Michael Peters, I think, is gathering data as we speak, perhaps, on the city's use of electricity. I don't know the answer on fluorescent lights. Maybe someone else does. Okay. But I know, and it's also a challenge to do the street lights as well, because I think there's the contract is with a Cleveland entity, and it's something that's on our radar screen for sure.
Several of the questions we're getting, and I'm going to sort of paraphrase them, talk about the fact that population is decreasing in Cuyahoga County, and what will these three boards be doing to attract new residents and sustaining residents for, in competition, if you will, with our surrounding areas and communities.
Can I just acknowledge one of the steps that was taken was the city invited us to send a school board member to serve on the marketing committee, city's marketing committee, and we certainly are mindful of the fact that we all need to work together to tell our story, to explain who we are, why we're such an amazing place to live, and so that certainly is one. That certainly is one thing. And my last slide there with the three children wearing the 2032, class of 2032 t-shirts, that comes from last Saturday, where we did our first kindergarten kickoff event in April. We invited anyone who might be registering for kindergarten to come to that event, and we had 150 families, students represented, and our typical kindergarten class is around 310, 315. I think we're onto something there. It was a very well-received event. All of the K through 4 principals were there, so you could meet your principal, PTO presidents, school nurses, transportation, jump on a bus if you wanted to, and have other questions answered. And I think that is a direction that we probably definitely need to move in, which is to capture young families early on so that they understand early on the attraction of our schools.
Of course, I think we need to understand as best as you can the state report card so that our reputation isn't significantly damaged by metrics that are often unknown to the people who even draft the legislation related to it. because I know that we do really, really well with people like myself who want to come back home and raise their kids. The little cutie pie in that slide that Jeff is talking about in the middle is Ben Garcia. His mother and I were co-captains of the track team when we were here. She's now a professor at John Carroll, and she moved back home after living in Canada. Imagine that. After the election, she still came back to America. And when she came back to America, she came home to Shaker Heights. We do a really good job with bringing people who are familiar with Shaker back home. We need to make sure that as companies and organizations are hiring talent outside of our area, that Shaker Heights remains top on the list of places that folks are interested in moving and raising their families in public education. Not just the private schools that are here. And I think the work that me and my fellow board members have been committed to do, especially since we've all joined together in the last year, is making sure that we work towards understanding the state report card, elevating our profile, and being really committed to making sure that people who aren't traditionally or may not be well, Shaker may not be well known to them, that we're on their radar as a place where they'd want to raise their children.
Anyone else?
It was mentioned the communications and marketing department of the city, and I just wanted to say that they do a fabulous job marketing the city. It's a very important part of attracting and retaining residents. And we have there's a new marketing program out there that you probably have seen, that Shaker 365. And so on Instagram and on Facebook and on other social media, there are pictures, and it's just a little one sentence phrase of why Shaker resonates with the people in the community and to make it more attractive to people coming to the community. And I think we continue to do that. We're having some ads, radio ads, and continue to reach out. And that's part of it. And part of it is, too, they are constantly collecting data about why people move to Shaker and do a survey to find out people's reasons. And that helps inform our decisions as we move forward. So I think we all work together to promote this and continue to do the best we can to attract and retain.
I can't pass up the chance to try to promote Shaker. I think everything we're doing up here is trying to promote and attract and retain residents. And it's challenging in this environment where Cuyahoga County's population has declined. The city of Shaker Heights' population has declined from probably 34 or 35,000 to about 28,000. And a lot of this is a function of people having fewer children, smaller households. But I do bristle a little bit at the notion that we should just accept sort of permanent decline. And I do think we have a really terrific opportunity with the Van Aken development, with a lot of new housing in Shaker, to reverse that trend. And I think this is an extremely attractive community. For all the reasons we've discussed up here, the schools are as good as they've ever been. And Aisha and I have been here for a long time dealing with in the schools, growing up in the schools. And I think they are, in a lot of respects, better than when we went here. It's just the challenge of the state testing and the narrative that's out there. But we've got a great opportunity, and I reject the notion that we should be accepting of a permanent decline in population.
I don't know of any specific initiatives that the library has, other than the fact that we're remodeling and renovating and repairing our existing buildings and offering this wide array of services to our community, from birth to our elderly population. And on top of all that, we have a fantastic board and an absolutely amazing director.
I don't know why I'm taking the microphone from him. I just need to let him keep talking. But I do want to piggyback on, we've been trying to also do a better job of telling our story, and I think we can continue to do a better job of telling our story. Libraries perennially hear that people don't know everything that there is to offer, and we've been trying, certainly through our Shaker Life presence, to improve how we tell our story, and I think it's something that we could keep doing a better job of.
Thank you. So we've heard about the library's plans with reference to buildings and facilities. We have two questions concerning one for the schools and one for the city. The city question is the city looking to retrofit existing buildings like City Hall? Is it considering new construction in order to be compliant with codes, et cetera? And do you see this project being most effective and sustainable? How would you get there with our current structures?
I will say that right now we are doing renovations at the city. We have renovated, we have a new elevator. If you haven't been over, come over and try out our new elevator. It works really well. But we are doing work in the city and on City Hall right now to try to make it more accommodating so we can consolidate some of our departments. There are staff here that we're hoping to bring back over into City Hall. It is still in the planning phase, but we're hoping to build out. There's an area above the old fire department, and that space is not being used. We have now fixed the elevator so it stops at that floor, and hopefully we will be able to utilize that space because we have people that are in the bottom of the building, especially in the planning department, that are really crammed in there. So we're hoping to provide additional space there. So we're working towards that right now. I don't know of any other new construction that we're thinking about on the city.
Yeah, I don't think there's any new construction plan. The Van Aken district, contrary to popular view, is actually a private development. As I said before, there's a lot of private investment interest in the city of Shaker. I would say, sort of as a pipe dream, I think Thornton Park someday down the road is an area where I think we'd all like to see improvements made, and that's a challenge because it's a hugely expensive building to operate. But there are no plans that I'm aware of for any new construction in the city, by the city government.
And with reference to the school board's question, it was a little more pointed, just with the fact that families are smaller and enrollments are less. How do you believe that this will impact the school's facility plans?
I think it's important to understand that these are large sunk capital investments, and you certainly don't want to react too soon. You don't want to react too slowly either. So having, as we begin our next strategic planning process, having a good long look at what we're doing with our facilities is most certainly in the cards. In the meantime, as you know, we have 8 buildings, the newest of which was opened in 1957, and they require maintenance and upkeep. That's been the purpose of our $30 million capital bond. We also, as you all know, will wind up in the fall of 2020 with a Fernway building that is completely outfitted with new walls, new interiors, new furniture, et cetera. We've got some pilots running to update classrooms so that flexible furniture may allow for more flexible learning spaces, and we'll have to sort of understand our demographics going forward. I'm with Sean. I think that it's not a foregone conclusion that this is a permanent trend, and we'll certainly keep an eye on things as they move forward. I'd also like to say, I mean, we've gone against trend. Northeast Ohio, over the last 10 years, has lost 13.5% of its students, about 53,000 students. Shaker has lost a smaller percentage, you know. So we're not, as far as that goes, I think that is a positive sign and something to build on.
Question with reference to Forward Together. Are the taxing bodies also looking at nonprofits operating in Shaker?
I think part of the whole process is not just looking at the 3 taxing authorities, but also looking at all kinds of organizations. You know, when we had the vision sessions with the consultants, we had stakeholders from the private schools come in. There have been conversations about other kinds of organizations as well. I think as we look at our space and our community as a whole and the mapping that the consultants have done, they're looking at all kinds of community assets, whether it's churches, green space, private schools, other kinds of organizations. So I think that the taxing bodies are the start of the conversation, but by no means the end of the conversation.
This is for the Sustainability Committee. Are you looking at composting at collection from residences and encouraging businesses to compost and recycle?
In a word, yes, we are. That is one of the things on our agenda, and hopefully a low-hanging fruit that we can address pretty quickly.
This is one for an interesting question. Given that we have a surplus of homes in Shaker Heights, that is an assumption, how do you feel about converting some of our beautiful housing stock into B&Bs or Airbnbs to promote the city, to bring revenues, et cetera? Has any thought been given to that?
I'll take this one because I've had a few inquiries from residents on this topic. Technically, I believe Airbnbs are illegal in Shaker, but I believe they occur. And I think it's something that we should consider through the committee process in Shaker. I think the city of Cleveland has passed legislation that authorizes, or regulations that govern the temporary stays in housing. Because we do have a lot of big old houses, and some of them are going unused, and they could be put to better use. So I think it's something we should look at.
This is a question for the school board. You brought up the fabulous trip that the band students took. What percentage of the students didn't go, and how was the trip financed, including both for spouses, staff, visitors, et cetera? How is that all put together for us?
So I know some of the answers to those, and not all of them, I will say, but there were 250 band members that went out of a 340-member band, so a large percentage of the band went. Families are responsible for paying the expense, though through the Shaker Schools Foundation and through the opportunity to, the equivalent of band sales, students are able to subsidize the cost of that. The Shaker Schools Foundation has been wonderful in helping students that can't afford it to go, but it's a very expensive trip, and I'm sure that cost played into it. Now, I know if you're a chaperone, which is an act of love, because you sleep almost not at all, get about $500 off your trip. It's not, you don't figure it out on an hourly basis in terms of how much time you spend. And I don't know how it works with, I assume everyone's on the hook for their own fees. I don't know of any other source. The school district isn't paying for spouses to go, if that's the question, yeah.
Library board, you're getting some kudos here. Someone says, kudos to you and your staff. The service ethic that permeates the library constantly exceeds all expectations. How have you established such an equitable, patron-oriented organization? And Amy did not write this question. I want you to know that. She did not write that question.
Hire the right director. I think we take our mission very seriously as members of the board, and it really did, all kidding aside, start with hiring the right director. We went through that process a few years ago. We had a nationwide search, and we found our director sitting in her office as the assistant director at that time. And under Amy's leadership, she is constantly looking at trends, as are her assistant director and members of her staff, and she gives them great credit for what they do for her and what they do for our library. And just to give you just one small example, when Amy took over as the director of the library, all of the managers of the various departments in the library became attendees of our monthly board meetings. And so they get a firsthand look at what we do, who we are, how we arrive at our decisions, and how that affects both the patrons of the library as well as those who work for the library. And they see that every month, and that's something that Amy spearheaded and has become a regular part of our meetings now. So with that, I'll turn it over to our director.
I just want to say we actually have an amazing staff at the library, and when I was doing the presentation, I don't plan all those programs. The staff does all that. I'm not the one doing all of this. It's the staff. I mean, I will admit that as I was looking at that, I'm like, all right, I'm working on the renovation, but they're doing all the rest of it. And honestly, I was bursting with pride as I was doing that at the amazing work of the library staff. They're outstanding, and I feel like I'm really lucky to work with such a great crowd.
This one is for the school board, and it's not an easy one. The indication of this is that obviously the school board took some criticism, or the school district took some criticism recently with reference to hirings, et cetera. And with reference to this, what would be plans going forward so the school would not be put in a position where residents might be dissatisfied with either how they heard about news, or the staff or students might be better prepared for announcements, et cetera? What would you look to do in the future?
So, since you haven't exactly said what the thing is, I'm guessing that it was announcing the superintendent.
And the principal?
The principal hasn't.
No, the former principal.
Oh, right. I mean, we will be announcing the new principal May 10th. They're challenging, very challenging decisions. We've had more than our share of challenging decisions as the year has gone on, and there have been situations where, because of turns of fate, et cetera, each of those has been the best choice at the time. I think that we're always listening to feedback. We get email, as you can imagine, constantly from residents and particularly families, and we try to be responsive to those comments and criticisms. I think it really is a matter of, once you talk through each of the situations, folks come to a new understanding of what and why you did something. We certainly know that it's best to be able to say that you're going to announce something on May 10th, a month in advance, and then to actually do it then, rather than to suddenly say, I think this is not going to work, we're going to have to do it differently. I think we have a community that is very willing to share with us what their concerns are, and it's on us to be responsive to those. So we know what the criticisms are, and
I just would like to add, because I think it is a tough question, Judge, but at the same time, I don't know that we as a community, because we're living this and experiencing it live and in living color, really understand what it means to have an organization that is willing to say, we have to make a change, right? And a lot of the work that I do, and I'm not talking about the law school so that no one gets confused, and a lot of the work that I do outside of this board, organizations tend to hunker down and say, we will never admit that we have the wrong person in place. Instead, what we're going to do is support this person no matter what, even at great detriment and expense to the rest of the folks that we're accountable to, right? I would hope that in some respects our community appreciates and understand that when we're required to make those hard decisions, we do so recognizing that it's most beneficial to everyone, and that we don't have pride in, as Jeff says, the original choice, right? I wasn't on the board at that time. He wasn't either when certain hires were made, but nonetheless, you have to take the information that's presented in front of you and do the responsible thing. You know, I think that we have done that. It hasn't been pretty, and it hasn't always felt good, but I think it's what we need to do, and I hope that our community recognizes that it's actually a sign of a healthy community, because we haven't hunkered down and said, we're going to continue to do everything just as we've always been doing it, because we don't want to admit any sort of fault or bad choice from some time ago.
Thank you. We are getting to the witching hour, and I want to give our co-chair an opportunity to say goodnight to everyone. But the last question, how can we better get citizens engaged in Shaker's civic life? I know we spoke a little bit about opening to committees in the beginning, but any other comments?
So I think we need to encourage younger folks who we see promise in to be involved and engaged. So it's nice to have open meetings and say, oh, it's open to everybody, but maybe we should think about inviting people specifically. And if we each took some responsibility towards doing that, then maybe it would feel more welcoming to folks who aren't otherwise engaged. I don't think it's any one entity or not even the three of our, who we're representing. I think that's a collective community obligation and could serve to go a long way.
Anyone else?
I'll just pivot back to my Human Relations Task Force discussion at the beginning. That's one of the main things we're trying to do with that organization, is just be inviting, be welcoming. People can show up at your city council meetings, you can show up at your school board meetings. I think we'd like to see younger people participating in our committees. We talked about that as one of the things we could do with the Sustainability Committee, is have high school students participate, do projects that could help save the city money and the expense of hiring another staff person. So there's any number of opportunities. We also have explored things, as I mentioned earlier, an app that would share community events, a display somewhere in the city that would share information about events that are coming up in the city. The city of Cleveland, some of you may have seen, is getting kiosks, interactive kiosks that pedestrians can walk up and touch the screen and learn about community events. May not make sense in Shaker for a variety of reasons, but things like that would be equitable. Anyone walking down the street could see that display and learn about what's going on in the community and show up, hopefully.
So I know each of our entities participates in activities that are very intentionally designed to build community, and I think that when people feel that they belong, they're much more willing to participate in civic life, because it is both, I know all of you have turned out for your own reasons, but it is also, you are also not somewhere else on a Tuesday night doing something else. It is sort of an act of generosity as much as it is, and you feel more generous to a community that you feel an obligation to and part of. So I think those are all important activities that we engage in.
Thank you. Madam, our co-chair.
Thank you, Judge. So this is why I live in Shaker. We have our judge, we have our mayor, we have everyone in city government represented in this room. And so I hope that each of you have gotten something out of the conversations that we've had tonight, and I hope that they will continue afterwards. So thank you to the judge, the mayor, and all of you here on the panel. And also, if you have a chance on your way out tonight, to your left, my right, we have Jo Byrne of See Your Words, and she has been visually recording the entire meeting. So I can't wait to get a closer look. So thank you, and hope to see you at the next forum. Good night.